Hello, this is my second submission to the Jool 5 challenge. The previous one was as part of the Kerbal challenge, where the goal is to land on all celestial bodies and unlock the whole tech tree, which is 9 launches. I did my Jool 5 in Kerbal, which is 30 parts, but I felt that there is so much room for improvement, so I came up with this: 8 parts. It consists of a Mark II lander can, 2 of the second largest fuel tanks from making history, and a single mammoth engine, and then 4 parts for ISRU. It has over 5,300 meters per second of vacuum delta V, but due to the fairly low TWR when fully fueled and substantial drag that it's experiencing, it needs close to 4,000 meters per second to get to low Kerbal orbit. Once in low Kerbal orbit, Bill gets worried about radiation poisoning from the RTG that's stowed away behind his seat. He goes on EVA and he glues it right next to the entrance. With KSP 1.11 out, I believe that the community should agree on whether to include such parts into low part count submissions. On one hand, it feels like you're artificially lowering your part count. On the other, storage isn't free, and also you're limited in the parts that you can use. The natural first landing in all ISRU missions is to go to Minimus. This is also convenient because the next transfer window to Jool is more than a year and a half in the future. Coincidentally, the Minimus landing was the only one that I had to repeat while recording. The problem is, if you hold SAS to retrograde, once you pick the tiniest bit of horizontal velocity, the whole craft starts oscillating, and those oscillations quickly spiral out of control. It also helps to touch down as vertically and as gently as possible. Now, this is of course not very efficient, but since this is an ISRU mission, and none of the legs were particularly tight on delta V requirements, this is okay. That transfer to Jool couldn't be simpler. I first lower my Kerbal periapsis, and then burn 1200 meters per second. Again, since this is an ISRU mission, there is no need to bother with Eve gravity assists. After a small correction burn midway, the course is set for Tylo encounter. 2 gravity assists off of Tylo and 1 off of Well later, I get a nice lathe encounter. Because of the low speed, almost all of the capture maneuver can be done by aerobraking. A couple of orbits later, the time has come to aim our descent to one of the islands with a crater lake. During testing, I had severe stability issues during descent to Lathe. The craft would simply flip midair and then refuse to rotate back until it was too late to brake. I solved it by employing a slight retrograde burn throughout the whole atmospheric entry. The landing is again very gentle. Valentina goes out for the first time and starts a series of flags that topple when planted. Seriously, anybody knows how to fix that? It started around the time I upgraded to 1.11. Valentina then demonstrates the pinnacle of Kerbal engineering: the lander can that you can enter gracefully without the use of leather or an EVA jetpack. After another year of refueling, the craft again demonstrates that more boosters are better than less drag. This ascent needed 3,400 meters per second of delta V. The remaining 2,000 is more than enough to get to Valentina's favorite moon, Val. Since the fuel tanks are almost empty, the TWR is in double digits. As a result, Val goes straight to landing procedure without completing a single orbit. Planning a flag is the only excitement besides the boring operation. With the fuel tanks stuffed with molten regolith, the craft feels significantly heavier. After a day in orbit, the time has come for a transfer to Tylo. The injected orbit is retrograde. This is not a huge issue because the surface of Tylo rotates by less than 20 meters per second. The landing is rather uneventful. By accident, I ended up in a pretty flat area. Once on the surface, while casually plants another flag, and then manages to get a concussion while trying to get back to the lander can. By the way, I haven't talked about the ISRU module yet. The lone RTG has nowhere near enough power output to keep the radiator, the drill, and the converter operational. This causes the drill to turn off. Luckily, if one switches to the tracking station before this happens, everything runs just fine in the background. With all 3 inner moons conquered, the rest of the mission is gonna be a breeze. To get to Bob, I first raise my upper Jool, and then adjust my inclination by a tile flyby. Once at Bob, I was adventurous enough to do the landing without any UI. Valentina literally plants a flag, while Bill prepares for the mining operation. We have to go to Paul now, there is no time to retract the drill. To make the last landing special, I happen to arrive at the solar eclipse. Maybe the low gravity of Paul will allow the flag to stand this time? As the transfer from Bob to Paul wasn't very expensive, I can skip the traditional mining operation right now. I do a tile flyby to save some delta V, then realize that it didn't really help me much, and do a correction burn. Once at Kerbal SOI, I do a moon flyby, but since the angle isn't so great and my relative velocity to the moon is so great, it doesn't help too much. The craft was somewhat prone to overheating, so I kept it spinning to distribute the heat. I'm sure our carbonauts welcome the excitement after a long transfer from Jool. A couple of hour braking passes later, there is nothing else to do other than to enjoy the final descent. To summarize, our 2 carbonauts landed on all 5 moons of Jool, left Kerbin in a ship with 8 parts, and came back with 9. I also tried substituting the 2 fuel tanks for a single large one, but this was simply too top-heavy and I couldn't get it to land anywhere. However, I'm confident that somebody will find a way how to do it with fewer parts. That being said, thank you for watching and let me know what you think of this video.